You may never eat bread again after watching this video. I'm talking about certain types of bread. There's actually two types of bread, the good and the bad. A lot of people have a confusion on which is which. Now, you can eat certain types of bread, and I'm going to show you which ones I'm going to recommend. But humans have been consuming bread for a very long time. I mean, it's recommended in the Bible. Many health organizations recommend eating bread. Even the food pyramid recommends that you should eat bread. But all bread is not created equal. There's a huge difference between this bread and this over here. Of course, this entire topic revolves around this idea of whole grains being healthy. So of course they put it in cereals and they call it heart healthy. This was the cereal that I consumed growing up as a child. Here's another one, but what are the other ingredients they're putting in it? I mean, right here it says contains bioengineered food ingredients. That's another word for GMOs. Well, apparently even instant oatmeal is heart healthy because it has the whole grains. Of course, they kind of downplay the massive amounts of sugar and additional ingredients. Here's more instant oatmeal, and then they have the 100% whole grain certification right here. They recommend to eat at least 3 ounces or equivalents, 3 serving sizes of whole grains every single day for fiber. By the way, there's not a lot of fiber in whole grains compared to vegetables. And of course, we even have snacks for babies here, Grain and Grow. Here we go. Whole grain goodness, of course, with added sugar and starches. Okay, really simply, we have the bad bread and the good bread. You're never going to get people off bread. There's things that you can buy that are healthier. And I'm about to tell you why you don't want to eat this version right here, because this is going to create a lot of inflammation in your gut. It's going to create weight gain. It's going to create blood sugar issues. But the reason people love bread so much is really wrapped around this one protein called gluten. Now, what's so special about gluten? First of all, it's the only protein that humans can't digest. Yet we eat a lot of it. But what's unique about this protein in grains is that it has a certain mouthfeel. And so a lot of people are addicted to bread because of that pleasure feeling that they get. Opioids get rid of pain. They actually get rid of stress. But the problem is, once you start stimulating those receptors in the brain, you start becoming more addicted. American bread especially has, in the last 50 years, we've been increasing the amount of gluten in bread, okay? And so now if we compare now to back 50 years ago, we have 5 times as much gluten. So what's the problem with gluten? It creates inflammation in your gut. It creates diseases like what's called celiac, which destroys the inside of your gut. A lot of people have allergies to this as well. In fact, certain autoimmune diseases, especially Hashimoto's, can be triggered by this whole gluten interaction with the gut. And then it goes across the immune barrier, and then your body starts to misidentify these proteins as being foreign. And then now you have these antibodies against it. And sometimes that can cross over into our own tissues. And now we start having antibodies against our own tissues. Autoimmune diseases are the #1 type of disease that actually surpassed heart disease and cancer. And out of all the autoimmune diseases, we have Hashimoto's is at the top of the list, and that is the thyroid autoimmune disease. And so what's the alternative? I like several types of alternatives. Now, what is einkorn flour? Well, that's an ancient grain that hasn't been altered, right, in a long, long time. So we made this bread last night with einkorn flour. The einkorn gluten is less elastic. It's good for flatbreads. It doesn't necessarily create as much of these sensations as well, but it's pretty darn close. But on the flip side, very few people have gut reactions to this. And the type of starch that's in this bread creates a less of a spike versus regular American bread. You have a different starch that will just really create this high spike in your blood sugars. The actual genetics of this grain, even though it's a wheat flour, is very different than the genetics that they're using right here. So it's very, very different. And then we have this other thing called the phytic acid. Phytic acid binds with minerals, okay? It connects with minerals, especially zinc, iron, magnesium, manganese, calcium, and copper. So when you consume foods high in phytic acid, it locks up these minerals, and it goes through the small intestine. Phytic acid cannot be absorbed in the small intestine. So guess what? Those minerals are stuck to it. And now these minerals are going to be lost through the digestion. So when you consume foods high in phytic acid, it actually depletes you of certain minerals. Now, is this going to really be a problem with nutritional levels? Maybe not. It depends how much you consume bread. Certain cultures who eat a lot of grains, a lot of bread, have zinc deficiencies, iron deficiencies because of this phytic acid. Now, how do you get rid of phytic acid? Well, you can refine it. You can just use regular flour. So in this wonderful bread right here, it doesn't have much phytic acid, but of course it has a lot of other things. But you can also ferment it, okay, like sourdough bread, or even sprout it. And by the way, this bread is fermented. But sprouted bread, as in Ezekiel bread, has low amounts of phytic acid. The cool thing about this bread is that it won't create this spike in blood sugars like these other breads. Also, I do notice when you consume bread in Europe, especially France or even Italy, and you buy bread from a bakery, it's a whole different experience. And that's simply because of the quality, and they ferment the bread longer, and they have different types of wheat that's not so high in gluten. I mean, think about this. France is a lot smaller than the US, yet they have 30,000 bakeries, and the US has 3,000. So you don't normally find bread in a bakery in the US. You go to the grocery store and it's been sitting on the shelf for quite some time, and that's the type of bread that people consume. And I guess I should probably just quickly mention some of the dough conditioners are banned in Europe, but they're allowed in America. So BVO or ADA, which is a whitener, or potassium bromate, these chemicals are banned in Europe, but we allow them, of course, in our wonderful bread. I'll put a few of those recipes down below, and I think you're going to like them. But we're always experimenting with different flours. We've got almond flour, coconut flour, and of course, einkorn flour as well. A few more points that you need to know about with American bread. The way they dry the wheat out in America is they use glyphosate. That's the stuff in Roundup, okay? They spray it to dry out the wheat. Now, other things that are exposed to glyphosate if it's genetically modified. But wheat typically is not genetically modified, but the point is that it has glyphosate. You don't want to have your body exposed to this. Sometimes you use bleach. And when you heat or you toast this and you kind of burn it and you eat it, you get a nice dose of what's called acrylamide. Acrylamide is known to cause cancer. So that's just one more negative on this list right here. Now, I hope I convinced you to avoid certain types of bread, okay? And if you're still not convinced, you might want to watch this video right here, and also click down below with some of these recipes that I just talked about, including this one right here. I think you'll really enjoy it. You can cut this up, put it in the toaster. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised in how delicious it is.